Sometimes destiny doesn't knock politely. Sometimes it walks into a church and destroys everything you thought you knew. The first thing I remember about that day was the smell of white roses. Hundreds of them lined the aisle of St. Michael's Church, filling the air with a sweetness so heavy it almost made me dizzy. Maybe it was the flowers. Maybe it was the nerves. Maybe it was the feeling I couldn't explain no matter how hard I tried. I stood at the altar in a white dress that had taken 8 months to pay for, staring at Ethan Brooks as sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows behind him. Everyone said I was lucky. Ethan was handsome, successful, respected. He loved me. At least that was what I kept telling myself. The organ music faded. Guests smiled. My mother dabbed tears from her eyes. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly how it was supposed to be. Then the church doors opened. The sound echoed through the sanctuary like a crack in reality itself. Every head turned. Mine included. A tall man stepped inside. Black suit. Broad shoulders. Dark hair brushed neatly back. He moved with the calm confidence of someone who never asked permission to enter any room. Behind him followed several men in tailored suits, all equally silent, equally composed. The atmosphere changed instantly. I felt it before I understood it. Conversations died. Smiles disappeared. Even the priest stopped speaking. The stranger's eyes locked onto mine from nearly 50 feet away. My breath caught. There was something familiar about him, though I was certain I had never seen him before in my life. His gaze wasn't curious. It wasn't confused. It was certain, like he had spent months searching for something and had finally found it. Ethan stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said sharply. "This is a private ceremony." The stranger ignored him completely. He continued walking down the aisle. Slow, controlled, deliberate. My pulse hammered in my ears. Every instinct told me something was wrong. When he finally stopped a few feet from the altar, silence swallowed the church whole. Then he looked directly at me and spoke. "This wedding can't happen." His voice was low and steady, the kind of voice people listened to whether they wanted to or not. Ethan's face flushed with anger. "Who the hell are you?" The stranger never looked away from me. Not once. "My name is Damian Moretti." Gasps spread through the guests. The name clearly meant something to them. It meant nothing to me. Damian's eyes softened for the briefest moment, almost as if seeing me hurt him somehow. Then he said the words that shattered my world. "You're carrying my child." The church erupted. Voices exploded from every direction. My mother stood up. Ethan shouted something I couldn't hear. The priest looked completely stunned. But all of it faded into distant noise, because I could only stare at the stranger standing before me. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. "That's impossible," I whispered. Damian's expression never changed. "No," he said quietly. "The impossible part is that you don't remember me." I did not remember moving. One second I was standing at the altar, and the next I was gripping the edge of a wooden pew because my knees suddenly felt weak. The church had dissolved into confusion around me. Voices overlapped. Questions flew from every direction. My mother was calling my name. Ethan was demanding answers, but none of it seemed real. The only thing that felt real was Damian Moretti standing 10 feet away, looking at me with an expression I could not understand. "You are wrong," I said. My voice sounded small compared to the storm inside my chest. "I have never seen you before." For the first time, something flickered across his face. Not anger, not frustration. Pain. Genuine pain. "That is what worries me," he said quietly. Ethan stepped between us. "This is over. Leave now." Damian finally looked at him. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "You should be asking her questions instead of me." Ethan clenched his jaw. "You are insane." Damian reached into his suit jacket. Several guests gasped. My heart stopped for a second, but he only removed a photograph. A single photograph. He walked forward and handed it directly to me. My fingers trembled as I took it. The moment I looked down, my stomach dropped. The picture showed a woman standing beside a lake at sunset. Her face was turned slightly toward the camera. She wore a gray sweater and jeans. The image was taken from a distance. It was not perfect. It was not clear, but it looked exactly like me. "That is not possible," I whispered. My eyes scanned every detail again. The hair, the smile, the posture, everything. "The photo was taken 7 months ago," Damian said. 3 weeks before she disappeared. I looked up at him. "That is not me." Yet even as I said the words, uncertainty crept into my voice. Because I could not explain what I was seeing. Ethan grabbed the photograph from my hands. "This proves nothing." Damien nodded slowly. You are right. Then he pulled out a second photograph. This one hit even harder. The woman was wearing a silver necklace, a small crescent moon pendant. My hand immediately flew to my throat. The exact same necklace rested against my skin beneath the collar of my wedding dress. My breathing became shallow. No, I whispered. No, no, no. Damien watched me carefully. That necklace belonged to her. My mind raced. I had owned the necklace for years. At least I thought I had. Had I? Suddenly, I could not remember where it came from. I could not remember buying it. I could not remember receiving it. The realization sent a chill through my entire body. Damien took one slow step forward. Olivia, he said softly, tell me something. I swallowed hard. What? His eyes never left mine. What happened to you 7 months ago? The question should have been simple. Instead, my mind went completely blank. Because for the first time in my life, I realized there was a period of time I could not fully remember. The silence that followed felt heavier than every eye in the church combined. I stood frozen, staring at Damien while his question echoed inside my head. What happened to you 7 months ago? I should have known the answer immediately. Most people could tell you where they were 7 months ago. They could remember birthdays, vacations, family dinners, ordinary moments. But when I searched my memory, all I found was fog. Ethan suddenly wrapped an arm around my shoulders. The gesture should have comforted me. Instead, it startled me. Olivia, he said softly, you do not need to answer any of this. This man is manipulating you. I looked at him. For the first time all day, something felt off. Not wrong exactly, just unfamiliar. His smile seemed forced. His eyes seemed nervous. Damien noticed it too. Ask her about the accident, he said. Ethan stiffened. Leave. Damien ignored him. Ask her what happened after the accident. My pulse quickened. Accident. The word hit me like a stone dropped into still water. I remembered rain. Headlights. The sound of tires on wet pavement. A hospital room. Then nothing. Just empty space where memories should have been. Olivia, Damien said carefully. How long were you unconscious? I blinked. I do not know. 3 weeks, he answered. My head snapped toward him. How do you know that? He reached into his jacket again and removed a folded document. Because I spent 21 days looking for you. The church fell silent once more. My fingers trembled as he handed me the paper. It was a hospital admission record. My name sat at the top. Olivia Carter. Date admitted. Date discharged. Everything was there. Everything except one detail. The emergency contact section was blank. Completely blank. That cannot be right, I whispered. Ethan was there. Ethan immediately stepped forward. Give me that. But Damien spoke before he could reach me. No, I was there. The words landed like thunder. My chest tightened. What are you talking about? Damien took a slow breath. For the first time since entering the church, his confidence seemed to crack. 7 months ago, I met a woman near Lake Crescent. His eyes locked onto mine. She saved my life during a fire at a lakeside lodge. Gasps spread through the guests. I barely heard them. For 3 days we stayed together while authorities closed the area. His voice grew quieter. Then she disappeared. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Images flickered through my mind. Orange light. Smoke in the distance. A wooden dock. Water reflecting the stars. The fragments appeared for a second before slipping away again. No, I whispered. That is not possible. But even as I spoke, my certainty was fading. Damien took another careful step closer. The woman had your face. My breathing became shallow. The woman had your voice. My hands shook. And she wore that necklace. The room tilted. Suddenly, I remembered something. A man's laugh carried across dark water. A hand reaching toward mine. A voice saying my name. My knees nearly gave out. Because for the first time, the stranger standing in front of me no longer felt like a stranger at all. The church suddenly felt too small. Too bright. Too loud. I pressed my fingers against the edge of the pew beside me, trying to steady myself as fragments of memory flashed through my mind like distant lightning. A wooden dock stretching over dark water. Pine trees swaying in the wind. The smell of smoke mixed with rain. Then nothing. The images vanished before I could grab hold of them. Olivia. Ethan's voice cut through the haze. Look at me. I turned toward him automatically. His expression was calm, but something about it felt rehearsed. Controlled. Like he was trying very hard not to lose control. You were in an accident, he said. The doctors told you memory gaps were possible. That does not mean this man knows you. Damien remained silent. Watching. waiting. I hated that his silence somehow felt more convincing than Ethan's explanation. Then tell me something, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Why can I not remember where I got this necklace? My hand tightened around the silver crescent moon hanging against my chest. Ethan blinked. Just once. But I noticed. You bought it years ago, he answered quickly. I do not remember that. His jaw tightened. You do not remember a lot of things from that time. The words landed harder than he intended. Because suddenly I realized he was right. There were holes everywhere. Small missing details I had never questioned before. Entire weekends I could not clearly place. Conversations that felt blurry. Memories that seemed borrowed instead of lived. Damien slowly reached into his jacket and removed a small leather notebook. It looked worn from use. He held it carefully, almost respectfully. This belonged to her, he said. The woman I knew. My stomach twisted. Why are you showing me this? Because I think it belongs to you. He handed it over. My fingers trembled as I opened the cover. The first page stopped my heart. My handwriting. Not similar. Not close. Mine. Every curve of every letter was unmistakable. I flipped through more pages. Notes. Sketches. Random thoughts. Grocery lists. Observations about sunsets and lakes and coffee shops. Things I would write. Things that sounded like me. No, I whispered. That is impossible. Then something slipped from between the pages. A photograph. It fluttered to the floor. I picked it up slowly. The image showed a lakeside lodge surrounded by tall pine trees. Across the bottom, someone had written a date in blue ink. 7 months ago. My chest tightened. Because I recognized the place instantly. Not from the photograph. From memory. A sudden wave of dizziness hit me. I saw myself standing on that dock. I heard laughter carried by the wind. I felt sunlight on my face. The memory lasted only seconds before disappearing again. I grabbed the nearest pew to keep my balance. Olivia. Damien's voice softened. You remember it. I could not answer. Fear crawled through every part of me. Not because I remembered. Because I did not understand why. Then another realization struck me. Something even worse. If Damien was telling the truth, then someone had hidden an entire chapter of my life from me. And the person standing closest to me was Ethan. The room seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I looked at Ethan, really looked at him, and for the first time since I met him, I saw hesitation. Tiny, fleeting, but there. The kind that appears when someone is afraid of what might be revealed next. Say something, I whispered. Ethan forced a smile. Olivia, you are overwhelmed. Anyone would be. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it back before I realized what I was doing. Hurt flashed across his face. Or maybe it was something else. Did you know about this? I asked. Know about what? The missing memories. His expression hardened. The doctors told us memory recovery could happen gradually. Damien folded his arms. That is not what she asked. Ethan ignored him. You are standing in a church listening to a stranger tell impossible stories. Then explain the notebook, I said. Explain the photographs. Silence. My heart sank. Because he did not have an answer. Damien reached into his jacket once more and produced a small envelope. There is something else. Ethan immediately stepped forward. Enough. The sharpness in his voice startled everyone. Even him. Damien held the envelope out toward me. Open it. My fingers felt numb as I slid a document from inside. At first I did not understand what I was seeing. Then my eyes landed on the date. 3 weeks ago. My breath caught. It was a medical report. My medical report. I scanned the page again. Then again. The words blurred. Olivia, my mother said from somewhere behind me. Honey, what is it? I could barely speak. This says I am pregnant. The church fell silent. Completely silent. I heard someone drop a program onto the floor. Ethan went pale. Damien never looked surprised. Almost as if he had been waiting for me to read it myself. That cannot be right, I whispered. I would have known. But deep down, I remembered the exhaustion. The headaches. The strange waves of nausea I had blamed on wedding stress. My hands trembled. Who gave you this? I asked Damien. Your doctor. My doctor would never release private records. She did not, Damien replied. She called me after recognizing your name. Confusion crashed through me. None of it made sense. Then another detail caught my eye. The estimated timeline. My stomach dropped. The report suggested the pregnancy had begun months earlier than I believed possible. Months before Ethan proposed. Months before many of the memories I could clearly recall. No, I whispered. That is wrong. Damien's voice softened. That timeline matches when we knew each other. Knew each other. The words echoed through my mind. Suddenly, another memory flashed before me. A lakeside cabin. Rain tapping against windows. A warm mug between my hands. A man sitting across from me, smiling. I could not see his face clearly, but I could hear his voice. The same voice, standing in front of me now. The image vanished as quickly as it appeared. My knees weakened. Ethan moved toward me again. Olivia, listen to me. But I could not. Because for the first time, a terrifying possibility entered my mind. What if Damien was not the one lying? What if the person I trusted most had been hiding the truth all along? The air inside the church felt impossibly thin. Every breath seemed harder than the last. I stared at the medical report in my trembling hands while dozens of people watched my life unravel in real time. My wedding dress suddenly felt heavy. The flowers, the music, the decorations, all of it seemed to belong to someone else's story. Not mine. Olivia. Ethan's voice was gentle again. Too gentle. Please come with me. We can talk about this privately. I looked at him. Then I looked at Damien. One of them was telling the truth. Maybe neither of them were. But deep inside, something had started changing. For the first time, I was afraid of the answers Ethan did not want me to hear. No, I said quietly. Ethan blinked. What? I said no. The words surprised even me. I need answers. A shadow crossed his face before disappearing almost immediately. You are confused. Then help me understand. Silence. The church waited. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck and looked away. That tiny movement hit me harder than any argument could have. Because Ethan always had answers. Always. Yet now he seemed to be searching for one. Damien broke the silence. Ask him where he found you after the accident. Ethan's jaw tightened. Enough. Ask him. My pulse quickened. Where did you find me? Ethan hesitated. Just long enough. At the hospital. Which hospital? Another pause. My stomach sank. Memorial Regional, he finally answered. Damien shook his head. Wrong. The single word echoed through the church. Ethan's face drained of color. You do not know what you are talking about. Damien calmly pulled out his phone and handed it to me. Read the discharge form. My hands shook as I looked at the screen. There it was. The name of the hospital. Not Memorial Regional. Pine Valley Medical Center. Located nearly 200 miles from the city. My breath caught. Why would you lie about that? I whispered. Ethan immediately stepped forward. I was trying to protect you. From what? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Damien watched him carefully. Tell her. Stay out of this. Tell her why her phone records disappeared. The church erupted into whispers. My heart pounded. My what? Damien's gaze never left Ethan. The week before her accident. Every call. Every message. Every photo. Gone. A cold chill spread through my body. Because I suddenly remembered buying a new phone after recovering. Ethan had told me the old one was damaged beyond repair. I had never questioned it. Why would I? Olivia, Ethan said quickly. I was trying to help you move on. Move on. The word struck something deep inside me. Another memory surfaced. Brief but vivid. Standing beside a lake at sunset. Smiling at someone just outside my view. Feeling happy. Truly happy. Happier than I had felt in years. Then the memory vanished. Tears burned behind my eyes. Because I could feel it now. There was a missing chapter in my life. A chapter someone had carefully erased. And as I looked at Ethan standing before me, I realized something that terrified me more than anything Damien had revealed. Ethan was not afraid of Damien. He was afraid of what I might remember next. My heart would not slow down. Every answer seemed to create 10 new questions. The church around me had faded into a blur of faces and whispers. The only people who felt real anymore were Ethan and Damien. One represented the life I thought I knew. The other represented the missing pieces I could no longer ignore. Tell me the truth, I said. My voice cracked. Both of you. Ethan looked exhausted suddenly. Older somehow. He loosened his tie and stared at the floor for several seconds before finally speaking. After your accident, the doctors told me your memory loss might be permanent. I waited. And I was afraid. His eyes lifted to meet mine. I thought if those memories returned, I would lose you. The confession landed like a stone in my chest. Not because it explained everything. Because it explained too little. Lose me to who? I asked. Ethan swallowed hard. To him. Damien remained perfectly still. That is not the whole story. Ethan laughed bitterly. Of course you would say that. Because she deserves the truth. Silence stretched between them. Then Damien reached into his wallet and removed a folded photograph. He handed it to me without a word. I looked down. The image stole my breath. It showed me sitting on the edge of a wooden dock with my shoes off. The sun was setting behind the lake. I was smiling. Not politely. Not for a camera. Truly smiling. Beside me sat Damien. We were looking at each other. Nothing dramatic. Nothing inappropriate. Just two people who looked genuinely happy. My hands began to shake. I remember this. The words escaped before I could stop them. Damien closed his eyes briefly, almost as if hearing that hurt him. You do? I nodded slowly. A little. More fragments surfaced. The scent of pine trees after rain. Hot chocolate in a roadside diner. A long conversation under string lights hanging outside a lakeside cafe. The memories were incomplete, but they were real. They belonged to me. Tears blurred my vision. We knew each other. Damien's voice softened. Yes. Another memory flashed. Stronger this time. I remembered sitting in a hospital room after the accident. Confused. Scared. Someone standing beside my bed. Not Ethan. Damien. He was holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. The memory hit so suddenly that I gasped. You came to see me. Damien looked stunned. Every day. My chest tightened. I remember. Ethan turned pale. Olivia. You told me nobody came. The accusation left my mouth before I could stop it. Ethan froze. Complete silence followed. Because he could not deny it. He had told me exactly that. That nobody had visited. That nobody had asked about me. That the life before the accident no longer mattered. A terrible realization settled over me. Piece by piece, the missing puzzle was coming together. And every new memory pointed in the same direction. Someone had not merely hidden the truth. Someone had carefully rewritten my life. Then another image flashed through my mind. The strongest one yet. A lakeside cabin. Rain against the windows. Damien standing in the doorway, smiling as he said 4 simple words that made my heart stop. I found you first. The memory hit me so hard that I nearly lost my balance. I could see it clearly now. The cabin. The rain. The warm light spilling from the kitchen window. Damien standing there with a smile that reached his eyes. For months those memories had been buried somewhere beyond my reach, but now they were breaking through one after another. I pressed a hand against my chest, trying to steady my breathing. I remember more, I whispered. Damien did not move. It was as if he was afraid that even the slightest interruption might cause the memories to disappear again. Tell me, he said softly. I closed my eyes. The church faded away. Suddenly I was back at the lake. I remembered the fire at the lodge. Not fear. Not chaos. What I remembered most was meeting Damien afterward. 2 strangers brought together by circumstances neither of us expected. I remembered long conversations. Shared meals. Hours spent talking about everything and nothing. I remembered feeling understood in a way I never had before. Tears slipped down my cheeks. You told me your favorite place in the world was the lake at sunrise, I said. Damien looked away for a second. Emotion flashed across his face. Yes. Another memory surfaced. And you hated coffee unless it had too much cream in it. A faint laugh escaped him. That is still true. The memories were no longer fragments. They were becoming a story. My story. Our story. Then I remembered something else. Something important. My eyes opened instantly. The accident. Damien nodded. What about it? I stared at him. It happened after I left the lake. He frowned. Yes. My pulse quickened. No. There is more. I turned toward Ethan. Suddenly, everything felt sharper. Clearer. You were there. Ethan froze. Complete silence filled the church. What? He asked. You were there before the accident. His face lost all color. The memory rushed back in full. I remembered stopping at a gas station during the drive home. I remembered checking my phone. I remembered seeing several missed calls from Ethan, even though we had not spoken in months before that trip. Then I remembered him appearing unexpectedly, smiling, asking if we could talk. My stomach twisted. You knew where I was. Ethan swallowed hard. Olivia, please. You knew I was with Damien. His shoulders sagged. For the first time, he looked defeated. Not angry. Not defensive. Defeated. My heart broke a little because I finally understood. You found me after the accident, I whispered. And when I lost my memory, you never told me about him. Ethan lowered his head. The silence became its own answer. A soft gasp escaped my mother somewhere behind me. Damien closed his eyes briefly. Months of confusion suddenly aligned into a single painful truth. Nobody had stolen my memories. The accident had done that. But someone had chosen not to help me find them again. And standing there in the middle of the church, I finally understood that the life I thought I was about to marry was built on a secret that could not survive the truth. The days that followed felt strangely quiet after the storm. The wedding never happened. There were no dramatic speeches, no grand confrontations, just truth, arriving one piece at a time and settling where confusion had lived for far too long. Ethan eventually admitted what I already knew. After the accident, he had seen an opportunity to become part of a life that no longer remembered its own past. He apologized, more than once. And while forgiveness came easier than forgetting, I realized something important. Holding on to anger would not give me back the months I had lost. So I let it go? Not for him. For myself. 3 months later, spring arrived. The snow melted from the hills surrounding Lake Crescent, and the water reflected the sky like polished glass. I stood on the same wooden dock from my memories, one hand resting gently against my growing stomach. The breeze carried the scent of pine trees and fresh rain. Everything looked exactly as I remembered, yet somehow it felt completely new. Footsteps sounded behind me. I smiled before turning around because I already knew who it was. Damien walked toward me carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate. Some things never changed. Too much cream, he said, handing one to me. I laughed. Still terrible coffee? Always. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We simply stood together watching sunlight dance across the lake. Peaceful, easy, familiar. The kind of silence that only exists between people who no longer need to prove anything. Damien looked out across the water before speaking softly. You know, there was a time I thought I had lost you forever. I turned toward him. The emotion in his eyes was impossible to miss. I know. Then one day you walked back into my life. He shook his head and smiled. Just not the way I expected. I laughed through tears. I think that applies to both of us. His hand found mine. Warm, steady, real. The future still held questions. Parenthood always would. Life always would. But for the first time in a very long time, uncertainty did not feel frightening. It felt hopeful, because whatever came next, we would face it together. A few months later, our daughter entered the world on a bright summer morning. She had my eyes and Damien's smile. The first time he held her, I saw tears in his eyes. Actual tears. He looked at her as if she were the answer to a question he had been asking his entire life. That evening, as golden sunlight filled the hospital room, Damien sat beside me holding our daughter while she slept peacefully against his chest. What are you thinking about? I asked. He smiled without looking away from her. How strange destiny is. I rested my head against his shoulder. Strange. The strangest thing in the world. He kissed the top of our daughter's head. I spent months searching for someone I thought was gone. His eyes met mine. Soft. Certain. Home. Turns out she was carrying my entire future with her all along. And as I looked at the family we had somehow found through lost memories, impossible odds, and second chances, I finally understood something. Sometimes fate does not arrive when everything goes right. Sometimes it appears after everything falls apart. Because the right person is not the one who enters your life when the path is clear. The right person is the one who stays when the road disappears and helps you find your way back home.